All right. Brett Kavanaugh and his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee is over, but the Senate Judiciary Committee is not done with Brett Kavanaugh. Now talking to a variety of witnesses, most speaking on, of course, the judge's behalf, that he make a fine. Supreme Court Justice, Democrats not so sure. This process looks like it's falling along party lines. Anything can and will change in the timeline. Optimistic for Republicans who hope to have him seated with the new Supreme Court session on October 1. Let's look at that timetable with our Capitol Hill senior producer, Chad Pergram. So, Chad, is that an optimistic timetable? How does it look?
No, that's pretty realistic. What we would expect is the Judiciary Committee, they could meet as early as next Thursday, the 13th, but there's a provision in their rules where they can push it back by a week. That will be requested by the Democrats. So the committee vote will be probably on the 20th. Now, it is an 11-10 advantage for Republicans on the committee, 21 members on the committee, so probably a party line vote. And then Mitch McConnell on the 20th would likely file what we call cloture. That's to end debate on the nomination right away. So we would have a procedural vote probably on the 24th of September, and then a final confirmation vote up or down on the 26th. Keep in mind, there's something at play here called the nuclear option. Last year, when they were moving through Neil Gorsuch to put him on the Supreme Court, Mitch McConnell changed the Senate precedent, not the rules, but the precedent, lowering the bar to end filibusters on Supreme Court nominees from 60 votes to 51. Now, just this past week, they seated John Kyle, the Republican senator from Arizona, to succeed John McCain. So Republicans will have 51 votes on that procedural vote.
Let me ask you a little bit about the controversy over these emails that came to light, going back to the brief period where the judge was part of the Bush administration, talking about Roe v. Wade, and now making people think, well, wait a minute, you just said in your testimony here to us that Roe v. Wade is precedent. You don't normally like to mess with precedent. Back then, he's talking about, well, maybe not. So I'm wondering, just the debate is over what? And would that be enough to get Republicans, like Susan Collins, for example?
Those are the two wild cards. Yeah. Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski have not announced their positions. We would expect to hear from senators in the next couple of days once the confirmation hearing breaks up at the end of the day today to start to announce their positions. We would look on the Democratic side of the aisle, a lot of these Democrats who are up for re-election in swing states like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp. But Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, sometimes, their views on abortion are a little different than the viewpoints by the rest of the Republican Party. And that's why this 2003 email from Kavanaugh is so interesting. And Democrats are saying, wait a minute, maybe he didn't tell the truth here. And they're urging Collins and Murkowski to go back and look at that email in particular. When he spoke with Susan Collins, Kavanaugh said that he thought that Roe, according to her, was, quote, settled law.
Yeah, and if he was raising back then, I think he was arguing, he was saying it as a lawyer that it's how that is interpreted, but it was a fine line, and I'm wondering if those two Republicans you mentioned, or anyone else you could think of, would be less disposed to writing off on it.
Yeah, probably not. And even if they lose one of those, if they're at least able to get to 50 votes, that's when we think that the Democrats will start to come on board. And I mentioned, Heitkamp and Manchin. If they can't get to 50 votes, that's a problem. And that's why the swearing in of Senator Kyle was so important. He was the Sherpa, the guy who took Brett Kavanaugh around to his Senate meetings. And he told me when he was coming into the Senate this week, he couldn't imagine a scenario where he wouldn't vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh unless there was a, quote, comet coming in from outer space or something.
Very quick, while I've got you here, President Obama is back on the stump on behalf of Democrats, the first of many speeches on candidates' behalf here. And he just sort of let it rip, talking, among other things, about his concern for the Republican Party, wondering what's happened to it, that Donald Trump isn't necessarily, the guy who should be taking credit for something that started under him, this economic recovery, et cetera. And he sort of rallied the base, if that's what the goal of these things is. Now, we do know, and you've reminded me, that in off-year elections or elections in which his name isn't on the ballot, and it isn't this go-round, it only gets you so far. What is your sense about what impact Barack Obama is going to have on these midterms?
Well, Donald Trump's name is not on the ballot, and certainly Barack Obama's name is not on the ballot. I mean, we found that out in 2010 because, Barack Obama developed this big coalition in 2008, which is why Democrats, won big in the House and Senate elections. He won the presidency, and then that all went away, at least in the House. They lost 63 seats. We are in a different political time. And when we're in a different political, period like this, one wonders that even if Donald Trump is not on the ballot, does the Trump voters show up? We keep seeing these trends in the so-called generic ballot. This is where they say, okay, you have a generic Democrat and a generic Republican. It's up to about 14 points in favor of the Democrats right now. It always favors the Democrats by a little bit, so that number needs to be up to at least 6 or 7 to flip the House. So if it's up 13, 14 points, that probably means there's a very good chance that they could win the House of Representatives. And the big problem here for the Republicans are defending all of these open seats, 40-plus open seats. But I tell you, there's a couple of districts I would look at. There's some problems for Democrats in Minnesota. There might be some problems in Florida. I mentioned one of these potential swing votes, Bill Nelson, senator in Florida. That's a red state, voted for President Trump. Very competitive re-election bid there against Rick Scott, the governor. So, this is not a done deal by any stretch of imagination, particularly in the Senate and certainly in the House as well.
Thank you, Chad, very, very much.